Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a subscriber ask a question which I'm going to flip in here for you guys. And you know, you get a question like this and a lot of people would say, I think he's kidding, that's not possible. But you know what? I take questions like this at face value because you'd be surprised how many people out there, when you talk to them, they don't really know these things and they ask these questions as serious questions. And sometimes it's better to go ahead and educate people on this rather than assume that they're trying to make a joke or be funny or anything, because they maybe legitimately don't know. They might be fairly new to all of this. And so in light of that, I think it's a fair question. But he's basically saying, I quit taking protein shakes, and the other day I did a chest and tricep workout. Now they're really sore. They've been sore for 2 days. Is it lack of protein because I've been eating eggs? So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, do a little bit of crafting, and let's talk about it. All right, brother, first of all, let's discuss protein needs again very briefly, and then we'll discuss what makes you sore from training. All right. Odds that you're not getting enough protein to recover and grow are pretty slim, especially since you're eating eggs. The only way this might be a problem is if you're not getting enough total calories. But if you're getting eggs, several eggs in a day, plus a fairly balanced diet, your protein intake and the quality of your protein is probably more than high enough for you to recover from training and to gain muscle mass. It's very, very doubtful you're not getting enough protein. Like I've said already before, most of the top experts in sports nutrition agree that athletes who are trying to maximize muscle gains need between 1 and 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. All right? Per kilogram of body weight. You need to understand, it is unlikely that you are using more than a couple grams of protein every day to build muscle mass. Very unlikely. And that's, again, that's being extreme. If you were to use 4 grams, maybe 5 grams of protein every day that you consume towards building muscle mass, that's actually fairly extreme. You probably aren't using that much. And I don't want people to think that I'm promoting low protein diets. You always have to remind people of that. There's a difference between promoting low protein diets versus not promoting ultra high insane protein diets that aren't actually benefiting people in terms of muscle gains, recovery, things like that. So if you're eating enough calories, particularly because you're eating eggs, which are a very, very high biological value protein source, pretty unlikely there. And again, the protein needs to gain muscle and recover are generally a lot lower than people think they are. Now, I already see a problem with what you mentioned with your training as far as soreness goes. And so before I say what your specific problem is, let's break down the causes of muscle soreness. What causes people to get sore from training? Because not everyone gets sore. Not everyone gets sore. Even people who are making fantastic gains don't always get sore. Usually you get sore when you first start training, the first few weeks. When you haven't been lifting, you've been sedentary, you start lifting, you can get insanely sore. We all started somewhere, so we have all experienced this. Every single one of us have experienced this who train, right? We know what this is. That's not being used to training, but you know what else causes it? Well, actually, it causes it through a couple of methods, because there are other things that cause training. Introduction of new training stimulus that is dramatically more than you're used to. All right, that can make you sore. Well, if you haven't been training at all, doing any training is a dramatic increase in training stimulus, so that's going to make you sore. But let's say you've been doing 3 sets of 8 on the bench press with 135 pounds or 60 kilos or whatever. We'll just call it the number 135, because I know I have people all around the world. And you suddenly add 2 or 3 new sets to it. You go from doing 3 sets of 8 to doing 5 sets of 8. And then maybe a back off set of 15 reps afterwards, right? You just dramatically increase your workload. You do know, of course, that you're only going to be able to stimulate a tiny, tiny little amount of muscle growth at any given workout, right? But you just over doubled your workload. Do you think that you're going to be sore the next day? Yeah, you probably are. Think you might be sore for 2 or 3 days? Yeah, there's a pretty good chance because you just dramatically increased your workload. You just dramatically increased your training stimulus. Now, people will mistake that for they dramatically increased their gains, but you didn't. Again, you can only stimulate so much muscle growth from any given workout. It's only a little tiny amount. It's small. So a dramatic increase isn't going to make a noticeable difference. You're still limited on the amount of muscle that you can stimulate in one training session. It's limited. It's not like you can just come in and double what you're doing and double your gains. It doesn't work that way. Not in the real world. It might not even add any extra gains over had you just added one extra rep somewhere. Meaning, had you taken your 3x8 to 3x9, or even went to 9 reps on one of those sets, or 10 reps on one of those sets, or had you added 2.5 or 5 pounds or something to the bar, you would probably gain the most muscle you're probably going to gain from that training session in your chest and your triceps, right? But a dramatic increase in training stimulus. Or you added a new exercise that you're not used to and you trained hard on that exercise. Let's say you've been doing nothing but bench press and the incline press for your chest and your triceps, and you run over and try dips. But you don't just try to learn the exercise. You get a little shaky on it for 1 or 2 sets, get the technique down, then you rep out a set to absolute failure, and then pick yourself up and try to force yourself to do a couple force reps using your legs. Of course you're going to be sore the next day. You introduced a dramatically new training stimulus and you pushed it too far. You're going to get sore. Does that mean that it stimulated new growth? No, it probably didn't stimulate any more new growth than had you just done 1 set and stopped a rep or 2 short of failure. It's not going to stimulate any more muscle growth than had you added that 5 pounds to the bar on the bench press. You can only stimulate a little bit of extra muscle on a workout, and changing something dramatic is not necessarily going to do that, but it will make you sore. The other thing that will cause soreness, not training often enough. Chest and tricep day. If you're waiting a week between training a given body part or exercise, it's more likely to get sore. All right, it is more likely to get sore. When you factor in the fact that most people who train infrequently on a muscle group or exercise tend to do what? They tend to do a lot of volume at once, which also means they're not always tracking their volume, and they're also very likely to add a bunch of extra stuff to try to shock the muscle. They'll tend to combine 2 things together. But do you know that if you're performing an exercise very frequently, you're less likely to get sore from doing it? You're less likely to get sore from doing it. The other thing that can cause a soreness, doing really slow eccentric reps, lowering the weight really slow, can cause extra micro tearing in the connective tissue of your muscles. All right, extra micro tearing in the connective tissue can make you sore. It doesn't mean it stimulated more growth, but it can make you sore. It can cause soreness, it can cause DOMS that last several days. So any of those 3 things are known causes of causing additional muscle soreness. Now in your case, you probably didn't change just taking the protein out, you changed something in your workout. If you talk about your chest and tricep workout, you probably run a body part split. Body part splits are more likely to make you sore than other training styles are. And you possibly did some slow negatives or some force reps, or you added some extra volume or a new exercise for your chest and triceps that day. That's what's making you sore. It's not the fact that you cut protein shakes out. There's no biological reason to think that removing protein shakes made you sore. But what you're doing with your training, that is most likely the cause. That's most likely what made you sore. If you're worried about getting sore like that, you're going to have to quit doing these body part splits like you're doing. And even worse, if you're doing body part splits, you damn sure can't change exercises very often, because changing exercises on a body part split, particularly coming and adding 3 or 4 sets of a new exercise on a body part split where you train a muscle once a week, that's going to cause soreness 9 out of 10 times. 9 out of 10 times that's going to make you sore, and that soreness might last 2, 3, or even 4 days due to micro tearing. The only way to make that soreness go away is, of course, to use the repeat bout effect, which means the exercise that caused you to be sore, you need to come back in and perform that exercise again the next day and probably the day again after that. Now, does any of that mean that you're going to recover better? No. Does it mean you're going to grow more from it? No. But it'll help you with the soreness. But the lesson that should be learned there is that it's your training style that's making you sore. It's what you're doing in the gym that's making you sore. You're training inappropriately. You're training in a way that's causing you to be sore that probably isn't giving you any extra muscle gains. But it's absolutely not removing protein shakes from your diet. Again, that can't make you sore. But infrequent training of a muscle group can make it sore. Changing exercises too frequently or particularly adding too much volume of a new exercise, or adding too much extra volume to anything in a workout, more than your body needs to adapt to, more additional training volume you need to actually adapt and make gains from, will make you sore at a very high frequency. So again, man, body part splits, adding new exercises, adding a bunch of volume on a new exercise, that's probably what's making you sore, brother. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.